Hi, I'm Deborah Pope, Executive Director of the Ezra Jack Keats Foundation, and on behalf of the EJK Foundation and our co-host, the DeGrumman Children's Literature Collection at the University of Southern Mississippi, I'm thrilled to welcome you to this, the very first official event of our EJK Award 35th anniversary campaign year. It couldn't be more perfect for us to begin with a webinar on how to run a mock EJK to kick off a year celebrating the actual EJK Award. What better way is there to expand the goals of the EJK Award and to increase the impact of diverse children's literature than to promote a program that actually has the kids analyze the books and choose the ones that they feel are most effective? And that's why we are so excited about the virtual and in-person toolkits now available on our website. The mock toolkit that you can download has all the information that you need to run this program. This webinar has been designed to give you bonus information to enhance your use of the toolkit. Throughout this webinar, we'll be giving you extra tips on virtual learning. And during the course of the year, we'll be adding to the resources on our website for educators, including this webinar, which is being recorded. And now it's time to introduce and welcome our panelists. John Scott.
Hello.
Caroline Ward.
Hi there.
Chris Carter.
Hey, Deborah.
And Ramona.
Greetings.
It's great to see you. Before we jump into the real content of the webinar and to highlight some of the books that have been honored by the EJK Award in the past, we asked each of you to bring your favorite EJK Award book and to describe it to us, but only in 5 words. And we're very lucky that each of you said yes. And so, John, would you begin?
Gladly. I chose, I got to get the glare right there, Tia Isa Wants a Car, written by Meg Medina and illustrated by Claudio Munoz. And my 5 words are childhood, family, hits your heart.
Excellent. The family part especially, that one really does highlight the family. Caroline.
Hi. Well, I chose a favorite, Rain, written by Linda Ashman, illustrated by Christian Robinson. And this won a 2014 Illustrator Award for Christian Robinson. And my words are exuberant, expressive, an intergenerational act of kindness.
I agree completely. You can see the exuberance even on just the cover illustration. Chris, you're up.
Great. And I chose Uptown by Brian Collier. And my 5 words are scrumptious collages, capture city life.
True, it's very true. Brian Collier, by the way, is the first illustrator to have won the EJK Award for illustration, and we're very proud of it. I think he is too. Ramona, round out the group.
So I picked Crown, an ode to the fresh cut, written by Derek Barnes and illustrated by Gordon C. James. And it's a celebration of community-given confidence.
I agree with you all. I really love those books. My favorite EJK Award book keeps changing, and there are usually more than one at any given time. This year, one of my favorites is Layla's Happiness, and I'm thrilled to say that Ashley Corrin, who won an EJK Award for illustrating the book, is here with us today. Maria Hidessa Akire Tali, who won an EJK Award honor for writing the book, wanted to be here, but circumstances wouldn't allow. Hi, Ashley. Thank you so much for joining us. We asked you if you would also bring a favorite children's book to share with us. Were you able to?
I did. So I brought Leaves, and this is by David Ezra Stein, and he won the Writer Award in 2008. And the words I chose were embrace life in the moment. And that's the Leaves.
I love that book too. I love Leaves. Ashley, we're looking forward to hearing more from you later in the webinar. And we're eager to hear questions and comments from all of you who've joined us from across the country. Please Use the chat function throughout the webinar. Panelists will be checking to see what comes in that can add to the discussion. John, it's time to hand the show over to you. I'll come back at the end. I know you're going to have a great time.
Thank you, Deborah. Hello, everyone. Welcome, fellow panelists and everyone attending. I am so proud to be here with this incredible group of experts. I'm currently sitting in my study in Baltimore, Maryland on a very hot day. But I am so proud to be here, and I am proud to have had a role in developing the toolkit along with my colleagues at Friends School of Baltimore, along with my fellow panelists here. If you could let us know where you're signing in from by chat, it would be great to hear how far and wide this webinar is traveling today. I see San Carlos, California is here. Texas. Ramona, do you see others?
We've got Egypt, Pennsylvania, Virginia, another Baltimore, New Mexico, upstate New York, Massachusetts, LA, Mississippi, California, Michigan, ooh, a fellow Michigander, Hattiesburg in Mississippi, Pasadena, Long Island, New York. We are well represented. Even someone from Egypt.
That is exciting. Well, we definitely want the EJK news to travel as far as it can. It's such an important award. We've also had the help of incredible educational reviewers. Everyone that contributed is named on the website, and many are in our session today. Please chat Franny, Diana, Josie, Montana, Roberta, and the others your thanks. This was definitely a team effort with a capital T. All of us were taken by surprise in the spring, having to move our teaching to Zoom or another platform, and that's why we're going to focus a great deal on how to run a mock EJK award virtually. There are special challenges and special rewards in a virtual program. One of the rewards is that it strengthens the student sense of community and belonging by participating in making a group decision. We're very interested in hearing about what you have learned from your virtual teaching experiences. Please feel free to share some of your comments and questions on what to do or not to do in the chat. We've already had hundreds of visitors to our new site. If you haven't had time to check it out, make sure you do so after the webinar. The virtual and in-person kits that you'll find on the site are extremely detailed, and we've made them as clear as possible. We've invited you to email your feedback to the foundation. The email address is on the web pages, and we're chatting it as well. We're all coming from varied experiences and a wide range of school and library communities. In this webinar, we will share some ideas for how to launch the program for your groups, but expect you'll naturally adapt it and bring your own expertise to the programs and make them your own. As a school librarian at Friends School of Baltimore, I had the privilege and the challenge of reading with up to 45 first graders on the screen at a time. And so my first virtual thought to share is, don't get too nervous about the wiggliness and movement of children, especially the younger ones on the screen. Put out what you believe are the best books, and they will bring the value. The children are taking it in, but not with the typical visual and verbal clues we're used to. Let the books do their thing. For me, the point is, mute all is okay. A few final introductory things. Today's webinar will focus on 3 specific areas: book selection, modeling the criteria, and voting. And as Deborah said, we will continue to give you special virtual thoughts. I just have to, on the chat, someone just said, wiggliness is amplified on screen. Absolutely, I feel wiggly myself doing this right now, and I'm trying to behave. First up is book selection. Ramona, take it away.
Thanks, John. So there are 3 main ways to identify books for your mock EJK award program. First, you can select books from reviews put out by trade publications and review journals, as well as the publisher's new book or debut book lists. Next, if you already have a traditional selection process you use, we recommend you keep going with that, and just keep an eye out for mock EJK eligible titles. And John will give us some more information about what makes one of those titles in a minute. And then finally, and possibly most easily, we have created a list of eligible books for you. And this list will be sent to you when you sign up for the mock. One question that you'll likely have to consider is whether you'll be able to purchase or borrow books. And this may be an especial challenge if your program is virtual. For this reason, we suggest beginning your book selection process early. In fact, a colleague who reviewed the toolkit for us is planning a program in a school that requires that she purchase all of her books before school starts. So she's already begun the process of thinking about and making her selections. And I just have to say, hi, Josie. Thanks for coming today. Here's a virtual thought. Be sure to check out the suggestions in the virtual toolkit. We've included ideas about how to get the books, and we've also included a link to an article about publishers making special accommodations to gain access to ebooks. Also, I just read the other day that Penguin Random House has extended their COVID permissions for virtual story times and videos through the end of the year, so perhaps other publishers will do likewise. John, how do you select your books?
That's great news, Ramona, about Penguin and Random House. I hope other publishers will follow suit. That would really be helpful. To select my books, I first look at the criteria for the real Ezra Jack Keats Award. It's very simple. You can see it on the screen, and it's also in the toolkits on page 6. Authors and illustrators may have no more than 3 published books prior to the one being considered. This is one reason why the Ezra Jack Keats Award has become known to shape many a career in writing and illustrating children's picture books. The books must also be published in the United States. My goal is to have about 20 books for my kindergartners to read and judge for our mock. It really depends on the length of your program. Our program at Friends lasts for months. We begin in the fall by looking at Ezra Jack Keats himself, past winners, and then we look at the criteria and start to make our decisions about what we think makes an Ezra Jack Keats book this year. Most programs, though, run from January through February, leading up to the real Ezra Jack Keats Award announcement, the second Tuesday of March. Here's a virtual thought. Think about how many books you think will work if they can't touch and feel them. Do you think some families will be able to purchase a few of the books? Do you think your school or library will make them accessible to families? If your children don't have connectivity issues, then perhaps you'll be able to find and gather a file of read aloud links on YouTube. Maybe your selection will only be 10 or 12 books this coming year. Caroline, how many books do you select for your 3rd graders to review?
Well, my model is a little different than yours, John. I'm a public librarian, and I reached out to 2 local elementary schools. So my mock partnership is among the media specialists, the classroom teachers, and the public library. In conjunction with my partners, we look at different lists and select and purchase our books in the fall. In addition to choosing books with a variety of art styles and themes, we also look for nonfiction because we want to provide the 3rd graders with really a rich choice of contenders. And our program takes place in January and February. We mirror the real EJK committee because they are also deliberating at that time. And since our time is much shorter than yours, John, we have determined that 12 books are really ideal for this timeline for our mock. In a virtual environment, it's really important for families and children to have access to the books so the children can revisit the titles. I would recommend enlisting the support of parents and caregivers when possible. One idea is to suggest families set up small and short reading groups with classmates to discuss the books. And I would look for parent or caregiver volunteers to lead one of these small groups. Ramona, how about you?
So I look at the books with both college students in a children's literature class and with 2nd through 5th graders in an after-school program. In the semester before doing the mock, like John, I'll have the students, both the older students and the younger students, look at previous EJK award winners as models so they get used to analyzing and discussing the books using the criteria. For the mock itself, I'll probably use 12 to 15 books, adjusting the total based on the number of students I'm working with. So the total number of books used varies depending on many factors, including the length of your program, your budget, access to books, and the number of students you're working with. John, can you talk more about making book selections specifically based off of the EJK criteria?
Sure, Ramona. To select the actual books, the four of us have already been looking through the available lists from the review publications. To date, we found about 33 titles that meet the criteria. As Ramona said, if you sign up to do a mock, the foundation will send you the list we've created. It will be updated as new books are identified. The sign-up link can be found on the 35th anniversary webpage. I think this is a huge step forward in spreading the good news of an EJK mock. My actual selection process involves the classroom teachers as well. We think of many factors like student curiosity and interests, books that may loosely echo the criteria, and our English and language arts goals. This means that we'll select books that include children of a variety of genders, characters of color, animals as main characters, nonfiction, especially nonfiction. That's always surprisingly popular with our group. It may mean funny books or special holiday books. Halloween is a big deal at our school, so it's great if we have a title that captures all of that student enthusiasm. By using the EJK criteria lens and by practicing reading and evaluating over and over again, children are encouraged to look more deeply and think more critically. Here's a virtual thought. In thinking about this criteria, perhaps some books' illustrations may translate better through remote and some might not. I'm thinking particularly of our criteria of words and pictures go together. It's just something we all need to be aware of as we're presenting books online, and some things that we might need to address, especially because illustrations just don't translate as well over the screen. Caroline, what about you? Tell us about third graders and the books that you found.
Well, we selected third graders for a number of reasons. They're on the cusp of being able to articulate a fairly high level of critical thinking. And this ability to analyze text and art and to read fluently gave our program a lot of flexibility. They can be read aloud to, they can read by themselves, or a combination of both. And as young judges, they're old enough to feel empowered to really look at picture books and apply both the EJK criteria as well as standard picture book evaluation. Their abilities at this age make it a learning and a rewarding experience for them. Now, throughout the year, I'm keeping my eyes open for potential books that are eligible. And one that I am excited about this year is The Old Truck. It's about a young girl who restores and rescues an old truck. And it is a debut book by two African-American brothers, Jerome and Jared Pumphrey. And I can't wait to talk to children about the art, because they handmade over 250 stamps to create this distinctive retro art. Ramona, how about you? Do you have a contender?
I do. I think I'm definitely going to be using this year We Are the Water Protectors, written by Carol Lindstrom and illustrated by Michaela Goad. Created by Native American artists, the book introduces aspects of the Ojibwe culture while emphasizing the connectedness of all people and really all life, and therefore the responsibility to defend the planet. The imagery in both the words and illustrations is powerful and should lead to some really rich discussions. Now that we've talked about book selections, let's turn the mic over to Chris.
Thanks, Ramona. Once you've selected your books, you'll want to decide the best way of sharing the books virtually with your students. Here are two ways that might work for your library or classroom. You might either photograph or videotape the book on a table with you turning the pages, or find a copy of this on YouTube. You'll see here in Layla's Happiness, which we'll showcase over the next half hour. Another way is to hold the book and turn the pages as you read, as I'm doing here with Layla's Happiness. This can be challenging because the frame may not be big enough, so you may have to play around with the book's placement in front of your camera. So now I'm going to turn it back over to John to introduce the criteria he created with his team.
Thanks, Chris. The criteria that you see was developed at Friends, and it's a modification of the actual criteria used by the Adult Selection Committee, but adjusted for kindergartners or lower grades. Here's a virtual thought. It's important for the students to have the criteria printed out for them at home to keep in their notebooks or hang in a convenient place for reference. When we're sharing books at school, we have pictures and words that match the criteria throughout our spaces. So at home, they're going to need something to help them make those connections as well. For the criterion of diversity, we decided to leave the topic open to the children's interpretation. I remember one of the books we read last year, Crab Cake by Andrea Cerumi, features marine wildlife. And when we asked the students to reflect on the diversity in the book, they talked about biodiversity. We were expecting a more adult lens on that, but it certainly was great to hear their viewpoint on diversity. Caroline, what would this look like in an older class?
The criteria for the real EJK award uses the word multicultural. And that was initially confusing to our third graders. The children were predominantly South Asian, Latino, or African American. And so I asked them how they saw themselves. We had a very productive and frank discussion about how the books we were evaluating reflected their lives and represented the diversity found in the classroom. Ideally, it's heartening when books have diverse characters that reflect a multicultural world without needing to point it out. And that is one of the joys of Layla's Happiness. The main character could be any child, but she happens to be a brown or black child. And this universality harkens back to the spirit of Keats. With the third graders, we talked a lot about the spirit of Ezra Jack Keats. And because we had discussed Keats and his work, the third graders seemed to understand this and would often describe a book in those terms. But John, I really used your child-friendly criteria. And one of the favorites of my third grade judges was Hits Your Heart. And this spread from Layla's Happiness. And when the sea reaches into her pocket to give me a sand dollar, gave the young judges the opportunity to talk about metaphor, and several mentioned that this poetic image hit their heart. Ramona, what about you?
So my college students, many of whom plan to become teachers and librarians, and I talk a lot about selecting books for the younger students that celebrate aspects of cultural identity or include diverse characters in common situations. In deciding on the books we'll share with 2nd through 5th graders, we'll probably include a few books that focus specifically on a social justice issue, particularly if we find a book with special resonance to our community. For example, one of the reasons I'm so excited about looking at We Are Water Protectors is we're located less than an hour from Flint, Michigan. So a book about water resources and our responsibilities will really strike a chord here. However, most of the books we'll feature in the mock will showcase diverse communities and families engaged in everyday life, enjoying special moments, or doing both simultaneously. Chris, how can we apply the diversity criteria to Layla's Happiness?
Thanks, Ramona. Let's take what John and his friends, school colleagues created and put it into practice using this year's EJK Award winner, Layla's Happiness. Questions you might consider discussing with your students for the diversity criteria are, what do you think diversity means and how is diversity presented? How do you see or define diversity? How is it used? And I really want to stress that there's a lot of adaptability to fit your specific school and community. Ordinarily, we would read the whole book to a class of students, but today we're only going to focus on a few pages of the book just to get a taste of what this might look like with students. I encourage everyone to respond in the chat box to any questions I ask during this abbreviated read aloud, and feel free to respond to each other's comments as well. So now I'm going to proceed as if we're with children on Zoom or whatever platform you're working on, a school or library. For this discussion, we may not be able to respond to all of your chats, so we'll continue the conversation on social media. So here you see the cover of Layla's Happiness, written by Akira Tale and illustrated by Ashley Corrin. Take a moment and take in the cover. What do you think is going on in this picture? What do you think this story might be about? And what do you see that makes you think that? So while you're taking in the cover and jotting down your responses in the chat, I'm going to invite Caroline and John to respond to this question. John and Caroline, what do you think is going on in the picture?
Well, actually, Chris, that was a question I asked my third grade judges, because this is one of the books that was one of our 12 contenders. And we had talked a lot about art and design. They had a lot of response to this cover. Obviously, the color yellow, how it's reflected in the dress, on the title, that meant sunshine and happiness to them. But they also talked a little bit about the girl's pattern on her dress reflected in the flowers. So, and they, of course, they also talked about kind of the freedom and lightness, the feeling that you get from this cover.
And we've got some comments coming in that looks like people are noticing the dandelions and the idea of making a wish that goes with that, which is, oh, I like that, a universal delight of blowing dandelions. Also, spring and summer, those colors are suggested by the colors of the cover. And then getting to make a wish, wishes and dreams.
Thanks, Ramona, for sharing those chats. So keep in mind that diversity is the specific criteria that we're going to discuss today. That's a great quality of the criteria, that you may interpret the questions in a number of ways, appropriate to your group and to the book you're reading. We're going to focus on 3 pages in particular from Layla's Happiness for the next section of our discussion. So on this first page, you'll see a double spread of a farmer's market. What are some examples of diversity you're noticing in this picture? Really take a look at what's happening in the foreground, the background, the middle ground, what you're noticing with the people, what they're shopping for, what they're purchasing.
Well, Chris, I'll jump in while we're waiting for friends to chat. I appreciate all of the different head coverings that people have on or don't have on in this picture.
Other people have picked up on the head coverings as well as the hairstyles, all the different kinds of people, and the food. Whole variety of items for sale here. And dogs, of course. Someone else has noticed the intergenerational audience for the marketplace, different ages, diverse foods, just a rich feeling of community, and different hair textures. The city environment could indicate more diversity. That you can spot Layla, the girl from the covers, in the foreground, so you can follow her along. Great thoughts.
So let's look at the next page. So on this page it says, "It's my dad," when he talks about growing up in South Carolina. How would you describe the different places on this page? Are they the same or different from the places where you or your parents grew up? So take a moment and kind of take that in and respond in the chat. You might keep in mind the division between the foreground and the background and what looks like a river that's running between them.
One of the things I appreciate so much on this page is the dad's arms, the way that they cross from the city scene almost all the way over to the more rural scene. That reminds me of my own dad, who grew up in a city but loved the country. And I find that really echoing back to my own childhood.
Well, and yes, the idea of flowing fingers reaching out, similar to what John mentioned, as well as the pride of the father, that we're getting to see the roots of the tree and water feeding going into those roots. Lovely connection to We Are Water Protectors there as well. The idea that the dad might be singing. It's near railroad tracks, which can refer to different parts of the city.
So thinking about singing, let's take a look at this third example from Layla's Happiness. I think happiness is hearing Juan's parents laugh after they dance salsa under the magnolia tree. So how might dance capture, describe, or reflect a person's history and background? And Caroline, would you like to add a little bit?
Sure. Well, obviously it's a biracial family, so there's diversity here. It's also representing how music, crosses all barriers. I also love the way the magnolia trees are designed around the text and the art. I think that's a really pleasing design.
And people are noticing that salsa refers to Latino music, but then there's also the universal of music and dance in every culture and a way of bringing communities together. Someone else noticed the hands dancing in the beat, or holding hands and having that connection, again, bringing together cultures as well as families and friends. Happiness on each page tying into Layla's happiness, the central question in the book. A great opportunity to sing or chant this page, something you could do in person or remotely, and that leaves connect to the notes of music, so nature is getting tied in as well.
I really appreciate how asking open-ended questions of our students, whether we're in a classroom or in a library, can really bring out the diversity criteria in the EJK Mock Award. So now we have a special treat. I'm going to welcome back Ashley Corrin, illustrator of Layla's Happiness, for a brief Q&A. And she's going to have an opportunity to talk a little bit about her process creating the illustrations for this book. To get us started, to give our participants and attendees time to kind of think about some questions they have for Ashley, I'm going to get us started. So Ashley, if you could just talk a little bit about how you arrived at the cover and the relationship between the text and the illustrations for Layla's Happiness.
Hello, everyone. It's so nice to be here with you today. So for the cover of Layla's Happiness, I really just wanted Layla's joy and connection to her natural world to shine through in the cover. You'll see the playfulness of the text and the motif of flowers around her and on her dress, and the color yellow is to kind of show how she embodies happiness and the poem about happiness that you'll read in the book. And yeah, the textures and the organic feel to the cover, I think kind of show that feeling of, happiness is an organic thing and nothing that's concrete, and something to embrace as well. And children and adults can embrace that concept too.
So Ashley, we have a question from one of our attendees. Do your illustrations reflect you or your childhood or family at all?
Yes, I love that question. That's one thing I loved about the story when I first read it. I grew up in the country, and so I was always in the grass, barefoot, picking honeysuckles and blowing dandelions myself. And I always felt a sense of contentment too in my natural world. So I guess I felt that connection and wanted to show that in the pages and hope other people would feel that as well. But yeah, it absolutely connects to my childhood. And then on one of the pages, there are fireflies, and we used to catch fireflies. And so I just, that felt like joy to me. And so I kind of wanted to bring those in the page as well.
And Caroline and John, do you have any questions for Ashley?
I'm seeing lots of things coming in on the chat here, an appreciation of all the textures.
So texture, I guess, is just the medium that I love to show through in all of my work. I think that I actually do this by computer, but I still hope to bring through that kind of like hand done feel. I do miss that, by the way. And I think texture is just something, it grounds us, it connects us to earth. And I think it, when you see it, I mentioned the leaves earlier. I can see texture in the way the watercolor shows through, and you kind of have to work with what's there when you're working with textures or watercolor. And I think that's part of the whole creative process that I appreciate.
Ashley, can you talk a little bit about your relationship with Akira, the author? Like, how did you partner together to create these illustrations? Akira
and Claudia, the publisher of Enchanted Lion Books, were looking for an illustrator, and they found my work on Women Who Draw. Our relationship was a fantastic one, and we stayed connected, and she felt very much like a sister in that process. And again, her story connected to my childhood, so it just felt very natural. We would text each other. She'd send me pictures to inspire me of her daughters doing things so that I got that sense of being a child, and I could hopefully bring that through in the pages. I'll give you an example. She took a picture of her daughter eating spaghetti, and it was all over her face. just to kind of be like, you know, show Layla very messy. Like Layla is not afraid to get dirty and experience the world. So she kind of just inspired me with her own life. And we continue to stay connected to make sure the story came to life the way it was supposed to.
Ashley, I want to thank you for sharing a little bit of your insight with respect to the process of creating the illustrations for Layla's Happiness. And I want to remind all of our attendees, we want to continue this conversation around the diversity criteria and the criteria regarding the EJK award in social media. So now I'm going to turn the mic over to Caroline to talk a little bit about voting strategies.
So the children have spent a lot of time reading, rereading, and discussing the books for several months before they might be ready to vote. Throughout our 2-month program and in between my visits to the school, the books were very available in the media center, in the classroom. They moved back and forth with the children. I made sure that the media specialist and the teacher were both very engaged in keeping the discussions going about the books. The criteria is always posted so kids can refer to it. And as John recommended, it's really great to print out that criteria so everyone can have their personal copy. Over the course of 2 months, I visit the schools 4 or 5 times, introducing Ezra Jack Keats and the 12 books, coming back to talk further once the children were familiar with the books, about analyzing the criteria, applying it to the books, looking at picture book evaluation. But of course, the best visit is the final visit when the kids are getting ready to vote. And now initially we would recommend a vote maybe 2 or 3 weeks before the end of the program, where the top 5 contenders are then reread and rethought about and discussed. But as March was closing in on us this year, we decided just to go with a simple 12-book ballot. The kids voted number 1, 3 votes, number 2, 2 votes. Their third choice was 1 vote. So we had a winner and 2 honors, and that seemed to work well. There's a lot more detail on the toolkits about various voting strategies. The voting system can easily be adapted to a remote or virtual environment. I want to emphasize that for us, the most important part of the voting was the why. The young judges had to think about what it was, why they were choosing this particular book as their favorite, and we would discuss it after the winners were announced. This, again, contributed to the building of their critical thinking skills. John, I know you had a slightly different voting method. Can you share yours with us?
Absolutely. I do think what you just said about that, getting to the why, is such a critical piece. So as our students read the books, each book is rated. The 20 books, we rate them. We use an app called Seesaw, which is an electronic portfolio and communications tool. So we use that to collect the student thinking, and we do that on a ballot like you see right here for Layla's Happiness with the criteria that we have. Our students put stars on these virtually, and then they record their thinking. Eventually, after we've read and recorded for all of the 20 books, we narrow down the choices to the top 7. And our children, again, use Seesaw. They circle the title that they most want to win the Ezra Jack Keats Award, their mock award, and they record their reasoning. The teachers then get to review all of these submissions to see how critical thinking has developed. We're really big fans of Seesaw at our school. By using the recording feature along with the star shapes we've created for the rating system, we are able to share all of this with our families so that they can get a window into the classroom and see their students work in authentic ways. It's one of the reasons why our program goes on for so long, because we've been able to find so much richness in the titles that are fit for Ezra Jack Keats. If we're in person, we'll set up voting booths on the tables, as you see on the slide. It's a very exciting time. If we have time, we do multiple rounds to narrow things down, but last year we were in much the same situation as Caroline, and we needed to sort of move things along. So we did get one final vote out of them, and we were able to record their thinking. We did have some honor books that sort of just depended on the way the numbers broke down for us. The teachers sort of do some work on the back end. We also, the teachers, vote ourselves to see if we line up with where the students are. Very interesting divergences there. So for virtual thought with students, especially older students, you could use polling on Zoom or other platforms, or you might be able to use breakout rooms to have discussions, or older students could even arrange their own discussion groups. One special item we need to mention, and that you've all probably noticed on all of the slides, is that the foundation has created an Ezra Jack Keats Award medallion ready for you to fill in your library or school name. You can use this however you wish, for slides or your award ceremony. It's up to you. Next up, let's bring all of the panelists and Deborah back for a Q&A.
Hi there, John. I'm here. I'm happy to be back. And we're going to slide right into the question and answer. And I believe, Chris, you're up to lead the Q&A.
Thanks, Deborah. So I want to invite all our attendees to ask any questions that you might have about the logistics or management of the mock EJK. You can enter your questions in the chat box. I'm going to get us started with one question that's on my mind because I'm a lower grade teacher. So this is for any of the panelists that would like to answer. So what ideas do you have to get kids in the lower grades to discuss the books with each other remotely?
Our kids are excited by the opportunity to have their opinions solicited. I think they find this authentic work. They know that it's happened in the past. They see the winners of the other, we refer to it as the other Ezra Jack Keats Award. And so they know that they're a part of something big and something real. And that draws a lot of participation out of them. Caroline, what about you?
Well, I agree with you as well. This is the sort of program that sells itself because for all the benefits we've discussed during the past hour, the children feel so empowered and so important to judge these books. I do want to respond to one of the comments from the participants in the chat. Someone said, after you've picked the 3 books, is there any way to honor the other 9? And absolutely, when we look at how many votes the various books got, I remember in particular, there was a rather, I would think maybe you consider special, picture book biography about a Chinese scientist, and it got 2 first-place votes. So we had very interesting discussions about why this book was important to 2 of the student judges. So I think even though you're picking a winner, the children have lived with these books for several months, and there's, just like in a real committee, there's a lot of difference of opinion in their voting.
I have to jump in there because I know that when we did our final vote, the winner, we had our winner and we were very excited about that. And then we were fortunate enough to have someone from the real Ezra Jack Keats Award Committee come to our school, and they were there for our reveal, our award ceremony. And then they shared what had won the real Ezra Jack Keats Award. Our kids were excited for them and they were excited for themselves at the same time. It was the cutest thing because they were like, well, good. Those judges did a good job too. It wasn't the same as our choice, but they were all good. And there were no hurt feelings, or it was really, they had invested so much of themselves in the titles that we were examining that they.
And John, I had the very same experience. After we vote and we talk and we go through the whole process, and then I say, now I have brought the books with me that the real committee chose. And I had the same response as you did.
This is wonderful for me to hear, because when I imagined it, I thought that the kids would be, sort of miffed at having had the real committee choose the wrong books. So it's wonderful
And-
to hear these stories of magnanimous acceptance.
Chris, can I jump in with a question for Ashley?
Sure.
So I noticed in the comments earlier during your session that Vonda Nelson pointed out that she loved the vibrant positivity of the book and the illustrations, and lots of people said yes and agreed with that. So can you talk a little bit about the reception you've gotten from the book? Have you gotten comments from parents or from young readers themselves about the parts that they've liked or how it's connected with them in terms of thinking about happiness?
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate that comment as well. It makes me happy that the joy shined through in the images and the joy that I felt creating it and also reading Akire's text. So thank you. And then, I hear a lot from people say, that it's their daughter's favorite book, that the chickens page, the page with the chickens is their favorite. What's another one I hear is a fun one? The farmer's market page, they like to find Layla in the mix of all the different people there. And just like reading it over and over again. And even my own daughter, there was a point, not anymore, but she kept pulling out Layla, and she would actually sit with me, she's 10 months, and look at all the pages. And that just brings my heart joy. So yeah, I've received a lot of good compliments. And what makes me most happy is that people can feel the joy and happiness from the illustrations and the text.
Ashley, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What does winning the Ezra Jack Keats Award do for you? What was that like? I know you spoke about it at the award ceremony, but for those who didn't hear it then, what does this award mean?
There's like levels of what this award means for me. I'd say I like to be very vulnerable. This was scary to illustrate this book because it was my first time. So it was reassuring and gave me some confidence. So I'll say to anyone or any child that's like, can I do that thing? Of course, it's like, go for your heart. And I feel like I was fortunate to work with Akire because her story is true to what I want to put out into the world, and that's about joy and happiness. And I'm grateful that what I wanted to put in the world, and Akire did also, was honored with this award. So for Layla and her happiness and the idea of happiness to have this platform, I think it's so important, especially for this time. And so it means the world to me that it was, honored in this way.
Thanks, Ashley. So we have a couple of questions in the chat. One is from one attendee who said that she missed the beginning. Do you give people the titles that they're voting on, John or Caroline?
Well, actually, I keep a kind of a running list of books that might be potential. But I think both Ramona and John said in the beginning that the foundation is going to make a list available to anyone who is going to be signing up for the mock. And this is very helpful because the criteria has a number of real specifics. It's very different than selecting a Caldecott because this is a new talent award. There are some perimeters. But the foundation is really going to give a lot of support for anyone who is interested in running a mock EJK.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely true.
And then that list is going to be longer than the amount of books you can possibly cover in one year's span. So you can pick and choose based on what works for your community. So there's a lot of choice. I just find it so wonderful to discover new talent this way. And
it has been very exciting to watch the careers of the EJK Award winners and honorees really blossom over the years. That's one of the things that we can celebrate with this 35th anniversary, as a matter of fact. The other thing I wanted to add, and we talked about it, and it is in also the toolkit, but I'd like to stress it, and that's the fact that once your institution or your parent organization buys these books, it adds to the school, to the library, to the group's diverse collection of books for their children, for all of their children, which is of course something that we're all aiming for right now. So it's a step forward for the entire institution.
So we have one attendee who says that they've never held a mock EJK award before. So is there any particular aspect of the virtual learning experience that lends itself to trying now?
Well, I think that one of the most exciting things is that there's a community of people forming around this idea of being a mock EJKer, and that we can share experiences. I know I'm looking forward to having my kindergartners being read to by Ramona's students now that we've made this connection and we know that we're both doing this work. So I'm looking forward to, and we've, with so many people in this attendance from around the world, having different readers come into my classroom and share that experience. And Zoom is, you know, how we can make those connections happen. So.
I think we're also in an experimental time. And I think, as John suggested, it would be terrific for people who are running mocks to share their experience as we go along. I know in Connecticut, they're still looking at doing a hybrid school week. And so there may be possibilities to actually have the physical books and to send them home with groups of children. So I think we are in an unknown time, and I think there's no time like the present to start, whether it's virtual or hybrid or real.
So I think we have time for 2 more questions. So we have a question for Ashley and one for Deborah. So I'll start with Ashley. Ashley, are you working on a new project for children now?
I am. I have something to release potentially in the spring. And then I just did a project with 2 doctors, and it was to educate, inform, and uplift children during the pandemic. It's a free resource and free download, and it's called We're Going to Be Okay.
So we have a few projects to look forward to from you.
Yes.
And then, so for our last question, we have a question for Deborah. Can you speak to how the real EJK Book Award Committee works? What is their process?
I can answer this, and so can Caroline, because Caroline has chaired the committee a few times, has been instrumental in the development of our process. We come together, and it's not all committees do that, but we actually physically come together in one city. We usually meet in New Orleans because that's very close to the DeGrumman Children's Literature Collection, which is in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And we spend a weekend together, and this is after a year of having read the books, because each judge gets a copy of each book. And so we come together having winnowed the group down, much in the way you have been talking about winnowing down the mock EJK group of books. And people sit around the table and decide which books they can let go of and which books really need more attention. And I'm not allowed to speak. That's the big thing, is that I'm not allowed to speak. How do I do, Caroline? Do I do well?
We try to keep you under control, Deborah. Not always easy.
But so I get to listen, though, and the quality of the interchange is quite remarkable. Our committee also has authors and illustrators on it, and that also makes it unusual. And so there are so many different vantage points and points made that it becomes almost like a seminar, a master class in how to analyze children's literature. I've learned an enormous amount, and there's a tremendous amount of congeniality, and I'm not making that up. People really enjoy this and get along. And then after 2 days, there are 2 books that one has 1 illustration, 1 author writing, and then there are the honor books, and everybody has a wonderful dinner and feels very, very good. And we're also very lucky now to be able to actually call the publishers from the room in which we have made the decisions. And so that has become a very important and exciting part of the process.
And I just want to add one thing, and Ashley, this is really all about you. I think one of the most exciting parts of this award is the possibility that it presents to the winners. It is such a joyful time, particularly, well, the virtual award ceremony was terrific, and it was terrific to see all of you interacting. But it really does give the possibilities of your career a real jump start, and that's wonderful for all of us to experience.
There is a tremendous amount of joy in it. It's absolutely true.
And Deborah, it looks like we have a few attendees that want to join the committee. So we're taking applications. So I want to thank all our attendees for their questions and the panelists for answering them. And I want to remind everyone that we're going to continue this conversation via social media. So continue to share your comments, your questions, your concerns about the mock EJK. So now I'm going to turn it back over to John to wrap things up.
Sure. Thank you, Chris. There definitely, this is the beginning of conversations. And I know there are questions that we didn't get answered, but we are invested in being in a community about this topic and this work. So we are excited to speak with you if you're running a program. So sign up on the 35th anniversary website. In addition to sending you the book list and tips, we're planning to have online discussions to support one another. In fact, all of us are planning to run some of our programs in an integrated fashion. Like I mentioned earlier, Ramona's students are going to be coming to Baltimore one way or another. Through a network of EJK mockers, we hope to create global connections and opportunities for sharing and even visiting online. Deborah, back to you.
Thank you, John, Caroline, Chris, and Ramona for a lively and substantive conversation. And thank you, Ashley, for the stunning illustrations in Layla's Happiness and for joining us here today. Special thanks always to Diana Voza, Robin Stein, Jocelyn McCarthy, and Riot Intraub, the team that makes all of this happen and happen beautifully. I hope that this webinar has inspired you to visit our 35th anniversary web pages, where you'll find toolkits and activities for remote as well as in-person learning. We're offering read-alouds and EJK Book Award discussion guides with lessons based on subjects like strong girls, social justice, and family. You'll also find the mock EJK sign-up form so that you can sign up to run this wonderful program. We'll keep in touch throughout the year with tips and information. But now we'd just like to say a very special thank you to all of you for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you again soon.